Welcome to the Dough Roller Money Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Berger. Today in episode 328, I'm going to talk about cars, driving, but probably not in the way you might think. This is not about whether you should own a car or not, or whether you should pay cash or, I don't know, get a 12-year loan for your car. That would be a bad idea, by the way. I do want to talk about driving, though, and in particular as it relates to automating our finances. And I know at first blush, those two things may seem totally unrelated, but maybe it'll give you some insight into how my mind works for better or worse. So that's what we're going to do. By the way, before we get to it, I'm recording this in February, towards the end of February. It'll probably go live in about a month. But one of the things I did for the first time was did some live streaming in Facebook, and specifically talking about the stock market because it's been down. Who knows where it will have gone, say, over a month of time between recording this and when it's published. But it was down, goodness, I don't know, 10% or so in the course of about 5 days. And so I did a live streaming in Facebook, basically just to encourage folks to say, look, this is normal. I mean, the specifics of why it went down are not normal. I don't think the coronavirus was something we would describe as normal. That's the thing. The specific reasons as to why are always new and interesting and scary, I suppose. But the fact that it's gone down 10% in a week, that's going to happen a lot. I mean, if you're in this for decades, just, buckle up and get used to it. That's just the way it is. And in fact, it can get even a lot worse. So anyway, did a live stream and really enjoyed it. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of that, mainly in Facebook, I guess, maybe also in YouTube, don't know, but yeah, check it out. All right, so to cars. Here's to give you some idea of how my mind works when it comes to money. I was really giving a lot of thought to fintech lately. Fintech is sort of a big deal in some circles, and we've talked about plenty of fintech companies. Think Betterment, Wealthfront, Acorns, Stash, Personal Capital, right? These are all examples of fintech. And I was thinking, as great as these tools can be, and I use many of them and have used even more in the past, they don't really fundamentally change the way we interact with money. I mean, you even take something like Betterment. Yes, it can create a very quick portfolio for you, for example. But so can a mutual fund, right? Or a couple of them, or a target date retirement fund, or a 3-fund portfolio. I mean, I suppose you could look at Betterment and say maybe it makes it a tad easier, maybe. But that's about it. Now that's, by the way, it's not meant as a criticism at all of Betterment. But rather, I think a limitation that I've seen in the way that technology can change how we manage money. And I think by and large, for all of the talk about fintech and online banking and iPhone apps and all of this stuff, that basically it really hasn't affected the way in which we manage our money all that much. And it made me start to think, well, why is that? Because technology obviously has revolutionized the way we do other things. But why hasn't it really revolutionized the way we relate to and interact with and use money? So I started thinking about, this gets us back to cars, driving. How do we make driving safer? Well, it seems to me there's 3 ways. One, we could become better drivers, right? We could all take whatever courses, I don't know, Secret Service folks have to take to become, I don't know, to be able to drive the limousine the president rides around in. That's probably not very practical. Would be very expensive to train a couple 100 million people in the U.S. on how to drive like the Secret Service, or I don't know, a stunt person. So probably not going to work, but I suppose it would make the roads safer. It certainly wouldn't eliminate accidents, but I'm guessing it would probably make things safer. Just, it's not really practical, right? Educating and training individuals to become better drivers. We have to take a driving test to get our license. Well, at least we did when I turned 16. I assume you still do. Not exactly a high hurdle to clear, though, right? But anyway, that would be one way. We could all be required to take an extensive 6 month training in how to drive an automobile in the most extreme circumstances. The second way, of course, would be to improve safety features on cars. And we've certainly done that over the years, right? I mean, back in the day, I can remember when no one ever wore a seatbelt and you didn't have a shoulder strap. And, the kids, we were all over the car. I mean, it was not like it is today. But they've slowly added technology. The 3-point seat belt, right? And then they've got, anti-lock brakes, for example. And they added airbags, right? And the list really can go on. Now they've got adaptive cruise, which is without question my favorite new feature in a car. All of these things, while they don't eliminate crashes, of course, they certainly reduce them. And in the case of something like an airbag, keep us safe. Again, it's not foolproof. It certainly makes driving safer, and I think very important, but it doesn't eliminate the problem, right? Well, the third way, and I think this is where we're headed, is right, was we just stop driving, right? The cars take over, and the cars drive us. Now, I know we're not there yet, and it's interesting when a self-driving car is in a crash, it's big news, and when someone dies, it's even bigger news. Of course, the hundreds and thousands of people that are dying because of human-driven cars, they don't make the news. But when we're thinking about letting computers take over something as important as driving, well, it's big news. Kind of reminds me of when no one would have ever thought to operate an elevator on their own. They just wouldn't do it, right? They had elevator operators. Eventually, we learned that, hey, maybe any one of us can push the button. Well, driving is perhaps a little more complicated and perhaps a little more at stake. But I think we're moving to autonomous cars, right? Where we remove ourselves from the picture. And we let cars do the driving. And my guess is it's going to pretty much all but eliminate car accidents. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. We know that. But I think you're going to see a dramatic reduction in accidents and in property damage and loss of life and injuries and all that sort of thing. And I started thinking, well, how do we take these three ways that we can make driving safer? We can be better drivers ourselves. We can improve the safety features of the car, and we can just let the car take over. How do we apply that to our finances? And it occurred to me that letting a computer take over our finances is probably not a direction we're heading in. And here's what I mean. I don't mean letting a betterment decide your asset allocation. That's easy. I'm talking about literally how you and I decide to spend our money, right? That's the driving that you and I are doing with our finances every day and week and month. How much do we spend at the grocery store? How big of a house do we buy? How expensive of a car do we get? And how do we finance it? Do we borrow money so that we can send our kids to college? Or as young people, do we borrow on our own so that we can go to college? I mean, in the list of decisions that we have to make and that we make day to day and month to month, it just goes on forever. And I don't think we're anywhere near having a computer make those decisions for us. We might not like some of the decisions the computer decided to make, right? But I don't think anyone's even thinking that way as far as I know. And that's really the equivalent of self-driving cars, right? If we wanted a computer to take over all of the decisions we make that implicate money and somehow program the computer to make the best decisions for us, well, that's just not anytime soon, if ever, right? We also aren't really good at the equivalent of making the car safer, right? It's just the application to our money is not really there. I mean, again, we don't like giving up control, even if it's not an extreme amount of control. We still want to control our own money. And it occurred to me that really, when it comes to money, we're left, trying to get smarter about how to deal with it. An approach that may not make a whole lot of sense practically in the case of driving, making everyone take a 6-month crash course on becoming an expert driver. But when it comes to our money, yeah, that's kind of really the approach we're taking. I mean, I kind of hope that's one of the reasons you listen to this podcast and visit doorworlder.net and perhaps listen to other podcasts and maybe YouTube channels and read books and whatever else you do to educate yourself. That's really kind of what we're doing, right? We're all taking crash courses in how to manage money. And it's kind of the only way we can do it, I think. I really just don't see how computers, in any meaningful sense, can take over that task for us. All right. So at this point, now you see how I think about driving and money, but it has some implications for us that I really want to talk about, because I do think there are a few things that we can do on our own that, while it doesn't give up control of our finances to a computer algorithm, of course, I do think it positions us to increase the odds that we'll make smart decisions with our money, or at least we'll make smart decisions with a portion of our money, right? And I have kind of three things in mind. And for the first one, I want to take the car analogy just one step further. And that is one area I didn't talk about that we, very familiar and common to us that makes driving safer is the government, right? The government does certain things that make driving safer. What do I mean? Well, they put in stoplights and stop signs, and they paint stripes, lines on the road, right? And they put up guardrails. Now, the interesting thing about guardrails is that they don't put them up everywhere, right? They only put them up usually on turns where there's real risk of a crash and real potential injury, right? They don't put up guardrails on, through your neighborhood where cars are hopefully driving relatively slowly and not taking hairpin turns, but on a freeway that has a big turn, you're going to see a guardrail, right? And the guardrail actually won't keep you from doing something really dumb if you want to, right? If you just floor it and drive right at the guardrail, it ain't going to save you. But it will hopefully keep you on the road if, you maybe lose attention for a moment, or fall asleep, or just skid off the road. Hopefully that guardrail is going to keep you from a really severe crash. And I think we need the same kind of guardrail in our finances. Again, it's not foolproof. If we want to mess up our finances, there ain't nothing out there that's going to stop us from doing that. But we can put up some guardrails that can help us hopefully avoid a real deadly crash when it comes to our money. And I have two things in mind. The first is something that I've talked about in the past. I call it the 3-category budget, but it doesn't have to be 3. It can be 1, it can be 5. Here's the deal. To really have an effective budget, we don't need to track every single dime that we spend. We can, and there's plenty of tools that help us do it, but we don't have to, right? There are plenty of budget categories where we're not going to wreck our car, right? I'm not going to completely destroy my monthly budget buying gasoline. It's just not going to happen. We have one car. I fill up the tank. When the tank is full, I stop spending, right? And it's pretty simple. And I don't really need to worry about my gas budget every month. It's not what's going to kill me. And for that matter, neither is groceries. Neither is our phone bill. It is what it is. Now, for you, some of those things could be a problem, and that's really the point. We want to pick the hairpin turns in our lives. What are the budget categories that are the equivalent of doing 65 miles an hour around a pretty sharp turn on a freeway? That's where we want to put up the guardrail, right? And we can do that by creating very strict budget rules for that category of spending. So for you, it might be clothing or jewelry or travel. For me, not actually that many right now, although I suppose if I asked my wife, she might be able to name a couple. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be gadgets. And so what we can do is set a very strict budget. We can even make it a cash budget and put the money in an envelope if we want to, or put it on a prepaid card that's just for that category. And when the money's gone, we stop spending. Now, again, just like a guardrail, nothing's going to stop us from burning through that money and then going in and getting more money and spending more on our category. But I do think it will one, bring awareness to us, right? We'll know if, let's say, eating out is your big thing and that's where you overspend and you've got a budget for the month or the week, and you've got the money in an envelope, or you've somehow segregated it, separated it from the rest of your money, and you can see it dwindling, right? It's a reminder. Hey, I set this budget up. I set this goal. I see the money, declining, decreasing. When I get to the end of it, I'm going to stop, hopefully, right? But that's the first way you can kind of use the guardrail concept to, maybe help spend less in those areas that are the most tempting for you. Again, we don't need the guardrails everywhere. We only need them where we're most likely to crash and burn with our money. That's the first thing. The second thing that I think can help with guardrails is that as soon as money comes into your checking account, usually through your paycheck, give it a job and put it to work immediately. Don't let it just sit there in your account. If you know that some of it's got to go to a credit card bill that's due in 10 days, don't wait 10 days. Just go pay it now. If you know your utility bill or your phone bill is due in a week, great, pay it now. You can even, and this is something our daughter has done, where her rent might not be due until the end of the month, and she gets, let's say, paid twice a month. She doesn't pay her rent twice, but she'll take half of her rent out of the first check and separate it and put it into a savings account that's just for rent. And then when she gets her next paycheck, she takes the other half, her rent is due, she takes it out of the savings account and pays it. Again, kind of like a guardrail. This isn't foolproof. You can still crash and burn if you really set your mind to it. But by taking the money that comes in, giving it a job immediately, and putting it to work, I think we at least decrease the likelihood that we're going to make really bad decisions with that money, and increase the likelihood that we're going to make good decisions, right? And that can even apply to savings. If your goal is to save a certain dollar amount or percentage of each paycheck, don't let it sit in the checking account. As soon as it comes in, get it to where it needs to go, whether it's an online bank for an emergency fund, or maybe you're funding an IRA at Vanguard or Betterment or wherever. Put it to work right away. And that brings me to the third area that I want to talk about that's more kind of equivalent to a self-driving car, as close as I think we can get when it comes to our money. And that is automation. Now, automation is talked about a lot in the world of personal finance. I've talked about it. And there's certain ways where it's sort of easy and obvious. For example, you join your work's 401k or 403b or other workplace retirement account, and you set up a certain amount of money that's going to get transferred over to your account every month or every paycheck, and they do it for you. You never even see the money. It comes right out. You see it come out of your paycheck. They put it in your 401k. It's automated. It's as close to self-driving, I think, as we can get. It's one of the reasons that, all other things being equal, I would prefer a 401k over an IRA. You can automate an IRA, right? You can set up an IRA so that you get paid on day one, and the next day there's an automatic transfer from your checking account to your IRA account. And I think that's great. And I think you should set it up if it can help you. I think that's terrific. But you still have to do it. And you have to set it up. Again, it's not that difficult. But everything we can take out of the process to simplify it, I think, helps. And with a 401k, you don't have to decide where to open the account up at. Your employer decides that for you. Hopefully they have some good investment choices, and it's automated. But here's the thing that I think we ought to do to take this a step further. We ought to have some kind of automation system set up above and beyond retirement savings, so that if we want to save money, it's automatically taken from our checking account, that say the day after payday, and put in. It could be an online savings account, it could be your Vanguard account or other brokerage account, wherever it goes. Have that system in place, even if it's $25 a paycheck, where it's automatically taken from your checking account to your savings account. Now, here's why I think it's so important to set that up. Even if you don't have that much money to put into the account every paycheck, is that as you're able to reduce your spending, for example, through the money audit. I've talked about the money audit a lot on this podcast. It's a big part of my book, Retire Before Mom and Dad, where you go through all of your monthly expenses and you say, okay, do I really need all of these things? If I don't, let's get rid of it. Can I get some of these things for less money? Can I maybe reduce what I have and save money? Maybe you get a less expensive cell phone account, or maybe you increase the deductible of your car insurance and that lowers your premium, right? I mean, there's really almost an unlimited ways to save money. A lot of it really, the limits are our own imagination. Here's the key. Once you save that money, the very next thing you do is go to your automation system. Let's just assume for a moment, for now, you're moving money from your checking account the day after each payday to an online savings account. And let's imagine you've increased your deductible on your car insurance and it saved you $30 a month in premiums. Take that $30 and add it to the automation system. Add it to the amount of money that's coming out of your checking account and going into, in this case, your online savings account. If you don't do that, you're going to spend the money and you're not even going to know where it went. And I'm speaking from experience when I say that. I literally will do this. I gave up a Hulu subscription because we were not using it. Now, the cost, I think, was $4.99 a month. Not exactly something that's going to break the bank. But if I'm not using it, why spend it? And then you can literally, I would take $4.99 and add it to my automation. Now, in my case, my automation system is a little different than what I'm describing, but it's because it works for me, and I don't think it's ideal for everyone. By the way, I will talk about how I've set up moving money from, say, our checking account to savings, and it's actually tied to credit card rewards, but that's maybe for another day. But the point is, even if you increase your transfer from your checking to your savings by $5, $10, it doesn't matter. It's all going to add up, and you've worked hard through the money audit to reduce your spending. And by the way, the one thing I like about the money audit is you can reduce your spending without making significant changes to the way you live. By the way, you can save a ton of money by making significant changes to the way you live, but you probably don't need me to tell you that. But there's plenty of ways where you can reduce your spending and not make significant changes to the way you live. That's the whole idea behind the money audit and sort of painless ways to save money. But once you do that, change the amount you're transferring in your automation from checking, in this case, to savings or wherever you're putting it immediately. And so over time, as you're spending less money and you're making changes to your cell phone bill or your utilities or your online, your various streaming subscriptions or your insurance, or maybe you refinance a loan and the payment's now lower. You could either take the extra payment and pay more down on the debt. That's fine. Automate it. Or take that savings and add it to your automation so that it goes from your checking to your savings. And that way you'll get the benefit of the money you've saved. So these are not, this is not self-driving cars yet. I get that. This takes some work on our part. We don't just hop into a car and push a button or log into our bank account and click a button and good things happen. And I'm not sure we'll ever get there when it comes to money. But I do think certain steps that we can set up, they take a little time to set up, but frankly, not much. And then once you have it set up, it's easy to maintain. That's the easy part. And increasing the amount you're transferring from checking to savings or from checking to a brokerage account, easy. You just log in, increase the amount, you're done. So I think these three things, the 3-category budget or however many categories give you trouble, laser focus on those categories and setting spending limits and sticking to them, giving every dollar a job, which by the way is a concept I learned from You Need a Budget, YNAB folks. Give every dollar a job and put the dollars to work as soon as they come in to your life. As soon as they come into your checking account, don't wait. And then not only automating as much of your finances as you can, but then increasing the amount of that automation, increasing the amount of your savings, say from checking to savings, as you're able to reduce your spending in different areas. Another example of that, by the way, is you're working hard to get out of debt and you pay off a loan. Terrific. Don't just let that money sit in your checking account. Automate it into whatever your financial goal is. It could be savings for an emergency fund. Perhaps you're saving to buy a home. Maybe some of it gets funneled to a 529 for your children. All great. But the point is, add it to your automation, and I think you're far less likely to do less than ideal things with the money, and far more likely to put that money to work in a way that will help you achieve your financial goals. Well, I hope I didn't, completely throw you off with my car analogies today. And that's how my mind thinks. I don't know what to tell you about that one. But listen, I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget about the Facebook group, doorroller.net/Facebook group. Would love to have you. I think we're up to like 8,500 people. So it's still growing, and would love to have you to be part of the group. Until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.